Hello there, divine loving greetings. It's me, Alura. Welcome back to Spiritually Awkward. Hello and divine living greetings. Welcome back. It's me, Laura, and welcome back to my channel. Before we get started, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and click like if you like the content. So this week you voted, and here it is, the topic that you all asked for, the Master Illusionist. So I bet a lot of people were really wondering what I was talking about when I mentioned the topic, especially when I proposed the idea there on Instagram for all of you to vote. The Master Illusionist is something that's kind of difficult to explain entirely. I would have to kind of go into some details that would give you the overall picture. So let's start with the fact that time and history have been rewritten according to the way that the elite want it. And I do have to be extremely careful. Not only have I been censored, but I'm losing views too, because right now being good, being righteous, learning truth, it's not the most popular thing. But with being delicate on the subject, looking back in history, there were scribes for kings, and they were told what to write. They didn't always write the exact truth. Time has been told in so many different ways until they finally settled upon the calendar that we use today. And nobody really even knows. You see, when there is a new consciousness being projected, if you've ever gone into the Bible, there are stories like Moses and how the firstborn sons were killed in that story, or even into Jesus' story, where King Herod had killed all the firstborn in the land. Now, this was very symbolic for the fact that those who carried the consciousness from the prior evolutionary period, they had to go. They couldn't continue walking the earth because they would influence those that were being equipped or trained or programmed for the new consciousness. Now, if you look back in 2012, and I use this example all the time, it was like a light switch just went on for everybody. They were promised awakening, ascension, creating their own reality, and it sounded so wonderful to so many people because they were so tired of living in restricted, limited, mediocre lives. So with that, something that was so taboo was then brought out to the mainstream and made something that was very popular and trendy even up until this day. So while that was happening, a lot of people that were against, spirituality, mysticism, esoteric teachings, those who thought that that kind of thing was evil, that it was spoken against in their religious belief systems, a lot of them were the ones that conformed to the New Age and didn't even realize that they had done it. They just kind of merged on in there. And I had said so many times before, there were people that picked on me for being psychic and for the predictions I made as a kid, for talking about heaven, angels, and God back when I was a child, that all of a sudden started coming to me and had a great support for what I was doing. And I would have to remind them, hey, remember when you bullied me? And not a lot of them did until I went into detail. And then they're like, oh yeah. And they were the ones that were claiming to had been always spiritual from the beginning. Oh, I grew up this way, I was always spiritual. And I'm like, no, you weren't. You bullied me. It was something that you were against. And they're like, no, I don't think so. And then I would tell them the details of different events, and it would trigger their memory, and they're like, oh yeah. And they would realize, and they're like, well, wait a minute, how did I even start thinking that I had always been this way? It was a mass consciousness that was projected, and that's what consciousness is. It's a projection because we live in this holographic matrix. Your consciousness within you is a frequency. It really is. People talk about the aura and the many colors, indigo children, rainbow children, crystal children. Those titles never had anything to do with the aura here. It had to do with the vibration in here. Because your aura obviously isn't going to stay indigo. It changes all the time with your thoughts and feelings. No, indigo children, crystal children, and so on are as such because of the color of their frequency, of their soul, of their consciousness. But nevertheless, it's still a frequency. It streams, it has a vibration, and it triggers down into the DNA system all of the information that's in that DNA library, and then it sends a signal back up, tells the mind what to think and the eyes what to see, and thus it experiences the reality around them. So with binaural beats, it's a very good example, because if you want a certain effect, you're going to put those headphones on, you're going to say, I want something that gives me an adrenaline rush. Type it in, binaural beats for adrenaline rush. You stick it on, and that frequency is going to then take your consciousness and align it with its frequency to get it to send transmissions through neurotransmitters, and then you're going to get that effect of an adrenaline rush. And it's that simple. It's that simple. A lot of people are talking about the great hum throughout the world. There have been strange sounds in the sky, and that's because there is a mass projected frequency in the air, and it has a lot to do with the illusionist. It really does. So you don't need to just sit in front of your TV. You don't have to sit just in front of your device to get this new form of consciousness projected into you. It's in the airways all around. You think about that. Wi-Fi sends signals to these phones without any wires connecting. It's just streaming in the air. So is this projected frequency. It's a mass consciousness. That's how trends started on one side of the world and ended up on the other without there being, communication systems at all back in ancient times, because it was a projected consciousness. So that's what happened back in 2012. And what a lot of people didn't realize is that they were walking right into a trap. And as we're coming into this time, we look back on 2016, it was the best year for everybody, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a great year. I had a great year in 2016. 2017, things, started to go downhill. I had predicted dark consciousness coming. A lot of people were like, what's that? She's out of her mind. And then at the end of 2017 into 2018, people were like, wow, she was right. This is very real. They started to feel the effects, because just like that light switch had been flipped on back in 2012 to make them spiritual and open-minded, now there was a switch, so to speak, that was making their consciousness shift. It was a projected frequency in the air, messing with the frequency of their own consciousness to align them with the new consciousness of the new age and new order that the powers here wanted people to adapt to. So others that are the firstborn flock of the older ways, of the older, teachings and belief systems, they don't want them around to recall or have memory of things prior to here, because then they're going to stop and they're going to say, wait a minute, what's going on in the world today? What's going on in society? These people are acting different. This isn't what happened back then. And then they're going to talk to people. They're going to say, look at how you're behaving. This isn't right. What's going on with you? Do you even realize, how you're living your life or what you're doing? And they don't want that. They don't want any interferences or anything. So memory is getting shut down. That's what they mean by killing the firstborn. It's killing the first consciousness that you started out with, so that you don't remember anything from the past whatsoever. And you're just naturally merging on forward into the future timeline with this new way. A good example of this is that 10, 15, 20 years ago, people didn't openly brag about their sex lives almost everywhere that we go, And people didn't joke around about violating one another sexually violently, but yeah, that's exactly what's going on. I had one girl, young girl, that was in a car full of people, and she said that the guys were just making jokes with one another, saying that they were going to violently sexually assault one another in some vile way. And they were all laughing about it, thinking it was the funniest thing in the world. And she was thinking, don't you realize what you're saying to one another? But she didn't want to say anything, she didn't want to be that oddball, that triggered, some kind of negative response in the crowd. So she just kept her mouth shut. But even the girls that came into the scene later on, they ended up going off doing their own thing, having their own conversation. And she had told me by email, she was like, Alura, they were talking about some very, very pornographic, intimate things that they had done to their boyfriends the night before. And these were girls that were like 15, 16 years old. And she was astounded. She was astounded. And that wasn't the first time I'd heard something like that. Like, I hear people talking like that myself, when I'm out. I have had other clients bring it to my attention, and it just goes to show, like, people are being programmed for a more immoral way of life. Now, it's coming from the illusionist. The illusionist is painting this picture, that everything is okay. Everything has always been this way. It's always been okay. Live your life. Do what you want. It's your reality, right? Do what thou wilt, harm none. But yet, if you look at the practices of today, they are harming people. They're harming the people that do them because they're attracting negative entities towards themselves. They're also prohibiting themselves from venturing off into the light where they can find a little bit of happiness, and instead they're attracting a lot of depression, a lot of negativity their way. And a lot of people are using magic against one another. They really are. People will do anything to get where they have to go. Is the truth, even if it means stomping on somebody, or even somebody that they're extremely close to, they'll knife in the back in a quick heartbeat to get where they want to go. And it's all about the illusion. When you are sad and depressed, you go home, you sit in your house, you're in front of the television, you're in front of your phone, and what do you see? You see nothing but illusions, right? And that's because television and even your phones and the air around you has this vibration, this frequency in it that keeps you locked into that mindset to want to keep repetitively living that cycle. I gotta go home, check my social media, watch the same repeats of the same shows, stay indoors, I'm not gonna go anywhere, I don't feel like going anywhere, I'm too depressed. And then as you're there, like I said in Dark Consciousness, the video, you're there in front of all these ads and all of these Photoshop pictures of these perfected looking beauties that don't really look that way. It's the age of deceit. It's not just the age of deceit for that reason, but it's a big reason. Only a master magician, a master illusionist could pull off an entire deceptive age. I'll get into that in just a minute. But looking at a lot of the posts, people are taking 2-second pictures just to make it look like they're happy in some location that's so popular and trending that everybody's taking the same darn picture with the same darn pose for. Why? Why do we need everybody to do the same thing? But that's the illusion that's being projected. Follow the leader. Who's the leader? The illusionist. The illusion is, this is what will make you happy. This is what will bring you fame. This is creating your own reality, but it's an artificial reality. A lot of those girls that are Instagram models, they don't look that way at all. way at all. These little tiny ways with these pear-shaped bottoms and these little tiny noses and these very animated looking faces, that's not who they are, you know. But they don't have to worry about that because they sit in their homes with their little posse of friends that they think they can trust, and they don't have to worry about seeing any of the other people out there. They just have to worry about bringing in that monetized cash. So they Photoshop and they try to look the best that they can. People are taking it all off. You know, I did a post about this. I am not against people that want to take pictures of their body. The body is a beautiful art form. It really, really is. For me, I can't do that because I'm a role model to people of all different ages. But if a woman has a very select age group and she's not afraid to take it off, and that's the content that her followers and viewers want to see, then so be it. Do your thing. You know, I'm not a judge. But for me as a spiritual teacher, I don't think it's appropriate because I'm not here promoting sex or seduction or beauty or any of that. I'm here to promote truth, you know, and I do promote it to a lot of people of different ages and different genders and different backgrounds and belief systems. It shouldn't be all about sex and image. So a lot of people are about sex and image though, and there's so much about it that they will alter their pictures to look so perfect, and then a lot of them are saving up that money so that they can actually go out and get the plastic surgery to look that way for real, and it doesn't even turn out that way. It never turns out that way. And this was coming from, think about this for a second, how many celebrities did you not really think were all that great looking, and then all of a sudden they were being talked about everywhere, and everybody suddenly thought they were like, wow, the greatest thing in the world, you know, and then nobody really ever knew how they became the greatest thing in the world. They just did. It's like, how did this person become hot and so important all of a sudden? It's propaganda. Hollywood is huge for this. You know, Hollywood is the billboard for the master illusionist, is the puppets that the illusionist uses to paint these pictures of a fake reality for people to get trapped inside of. And while you're looking at all this, while you're depressed and you hate your job and you hate your life and you don't get along with your family, you tried being spiritual, you didn't support that, now you're trying to kind of just do your own thing to take your mind off of all of the stress and worries. You're looking at all these illusions, and then there's a frequency trapping you into it. It makes you do the same thing every day and watch the same things every day. I mean, there's people that watch one show an entire season like 12, 13, 14 times. You know, I'm not knocking on you. If that's what you want to do with your time, that's your business, and if that's what you like, then fine. But ask yourself, like, why are you watching the same thing over and over and over again? You're creating like your own self-made purgatory. Many people are. And that brings me back to, you know, the whole thing with the dark Return of the Dark Sun, Nibiru, and all that other stuff. That was very symbolic for exactly what's happening today, for this dark consciousness, which is like purgatory. Everyone is living in a projected purgatorial world that's repetitive and illusionary. The master illusionist is that it is the age of deceit. It is a deceptive age in all ways, because even the age itself is false. You know, look at the agendas for these different ages. Pisces was about awakening and brotherhood, and that didn't take place. Instead, the entire age of Pisces was about society working its way towards the industrial and technological ages. You know, and behind the scenes, they were doing magical rites to rever its opposition sign of Virgo. You know, Virgo is the masculine form of virgin. So it was never a woman, it was always a man. You know, and look at the churches. The churches abuse young virgins. You know, they defile that. But looking at also the age of Aquarius, that would be about philosophy and science. Well, that was taking place also, you know. Pisces is like 2,000 some years old, and yet technology, communications, all of that took place. All of that took place instead. Philosophy, everything. Now coming into where we're at today, it should be those things just newly developing, philosophy and science and all of that. But since it's already taken place, look at the agenda that is happening around you. And what is it? Immorality, deception at an all-time high, crime at an all-time high, disaster, destruction, overindulgence, vanity, ego, vainglory, greed, the deadly sins. And what's that associated with? Well, the devil. And the devil is associated with the age of Capricorn, which is the last age of man. And that's why everything is happening as it is. That is the illusionist. The illusionist is the fact that it's not even the correct propaganda for the astrological age that we're in. Instead, they're promoting this propaganda of the age of Capricorn. Why? Why is that rushed? You know, you have to ask yourself that. And going into everyone being forced indoors, they promised you could create your own reality, but yet you're sitting in your house watching reruns, staring at social media. How is that creating your own reality? You're living in an artificial reality. You know? It's hard to create your own reality. I have students that are still trying, but they're getting there, and it's not impossible for you. It's not impossible for anybody. But you have to want it, and you have to invest in it. But still, that's not what the majority of society is doing. They're caught up indoors in this purgatorial world, doing the same thing every day in this artificial reality around them. Why? Because of what's really going on out there, that the powers don't want anyone to be outside and have awareness and really be awakened to see. This is not a world that's ascending into 5D, ladies and gentlemen. Crime is at an all-time high. Natural disasters are more than ever before in history of Earth. There are great immoral things happening. But nobody wants to see it. They'd rather live like this is the last day on Earth and do whatever they want. And they would rather ignore it. And it was said it's easier to, you know, follow the crowd and do what everybody else is doing than go down the straight and narrow road. And that brings me back to what I said in the beginning. Like, it's really hard for even me to get views because I'm trying so hard to get everybody to do the right thing. I'm trying hard to teach the truth, and they silence me. Or people themselves don't want to be involved because they know they have to change and they don't want to change. Or I'm losing friends, or I'm losing following because there are spiritual forces that are giving them some bad luck or negativity because they support me to try to chase them away from me so that they don't learn truth or wisdom or have that purity or unconditional love that I offer. You know, they want them to succumb. Like, just admit that you're defeated. Stop dealing with her or any other resources of truth and just submit. Submit to the fact that life is hard, it stinks, and you're never going to get anywhere, and just stay there and fall with the rest of the world. And that's what's happening. That's what a lot of people, even those that aren't my followers, a lot of them are falling into that. And that is the illusion. The illusion is that, number one, you're stuck, and you're not. The illusion is that you're creating your reality, but you're not. You're living in an artificial one. Then there's massive illusions of everything that you see around you on the television and social media because it's promised to make you happy, but it doesn't. You know? It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. We are living in the last generation because think about how horrible the generations are now in crime and behavior. Like I've said time and time again, I mean, you could fall down and be on the brink of death and someone's going to stop to record it to put it on social media rather than help you because there's no compassion, no love or empathy anymore. How can the world be ascending without compassion or empathy? You know? So the world itself is descending. It's getting stuck in this vibration that is a repetitive cycle for everyone, and everyone is under the illusion that there's nothing wrong. They're living in a delusional state. And the powers, the false deceptive age, that is the master illusionist. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please stay tuned for my next video next week, in which we're going to talk a little bit about how to spot a handler in mind control. Bye-bye for now.